Hello, everybody. I'm subbing in for Richard Dodd tonight. Appreciate him giving us the opportunity for an hour here to talk about the Manchester election and what's going on in our state. I'm joined with the chairman of Fish and Game, James Spillane, up at the State House, and the secretary of the Manchester Republican Committee, Ben. He's also running for office. What ward are you in?
Ward 2.
Ward 2. There we go. Can we throw up the graphic of what's going on in the races? We could talk about that for a second. All right. So if you're watching the show tonight, in Ward 1, Andrew Fromouth. Ward 2, we got Ben. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a few minutes and talk a little bit about what's going on. In Ward 3, we have Tim Peters. It's been a long time since you've had a Republican run in Ward 3, so that's a good thing. Again, in Ward 4, it's been a long time since you had a Republican run there. That's Dennis DeMars. In Ward 5, we have Kathy Paquette. We'll circle around to that because that's kind of an interesting story. And then in Ward 6, your favorites, you got Larry Gagne and Will Infantine. You're both familiar with them. I'm running in 7. In 8, we have Mark McLean and Mark Prue. They're already up at the State House. They're running for re-election this year. In 9, we have Jose Marte and Pierre Dupont. In 10, we have Matt Drew. He's a newcomer. In 11, we have Bill Gabler and Carl Beasel. And in 12, we have Steve Kesselring and Juliet DePietro. Now, in all the wards in Manchester, you get to run for 2 seats, and then we have 9 people that float throughout the city. We have 33 seats that are available. So the people that are running in wards 6, 8, and 9, these are your floats. It's going to be John Morton and Mark Warden. Those are your floats. And float 40, those are wards 1, 3, 10, 11, 12. That's going to be Andre Rosa, Carlos Gonzalez, Alex Krantz, and Carla Garecki. And in float 41, which is 3 seats, you're going to have Lee Davis, Melody Smith, and Ryan Hebert. So that's what's going on in the city as far as that goes. Ben, why don't you take a couple seconds to introduce yourself? You're running in Ward 2. Tell us a little bit what's going on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Ward 2, it's sort of over the north end of Manchester, if you're not familiar. Jumped in the race after joining the committee earlier this year. And I was trying to, I've lived in, just a little bit about me, I guess. I've lived in Manchester since I was about 11 years old. And when I moved out on my own, got my own place in Ward 2, been there for about 7 years now. Love the city. I love the potential of Manchester. So it's really a big passion. Politics has always been a big passion of mine. So trying to jump in and do what I can. I love New Hampshire in general because we have such a big legislature. You really get a broad representation down to a small percentage, by comparison, a small percentage of the population compared to other states. So it really is your neighbor that you're electing to go represent you. So it's my passion to jump in that process and represent essentially my broader neighborhood and try to do the best I can for the people that live around me, and help the ward, help the area I live in, and help New Hampshire overall. We're a live free or die state. I really believe that. To me, that means that we want the government out of our business as much as possible, and to have as much freedom to do with our lives what we want to do with our lives. That's free from regulation, free from or as few taxes as possible, that type of thing. To do as much of the resources that we make with the hours of our life we spend working, whether it's for ourselves, for an employer, to be able to use that money to further our lives and do what we want with it and keep the government out of that. So that's a big passion of mine. That's why I'm jumping in and want to represent the people of my community.
Ben is also the secretary of the Manchester Republican Committee, and I kind of roped him into doing the website. So why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's how I got involved. Just trying to, I work in technology. I've been doing that for a long time. It's a big passion of mine to try to help people have better communication mechanisms, both internally for the committee and also for those that are volunteering to run. And again, where it's a bunch of local people, our neighbors, stepping up to run and represent those around us. Helping people collaborate better, coming from that background as normal people. That's one thing I'm trying to implement with the committee. Help our internal communications and help the public know, hey, who are we voting for, and what are we voting for? So trying to help the website a little bit, get some help more information get out there, be more readily available, and help people understand their candidates and who they're voting for.
So what do they have to look forward to coming up on the website?
So we're going to be publishing profiles for each candidate, and you'll be able to see a picture and a little bit of a background, a bio on each candidate, so you kind of get to know them through that. Contact information, so if you want to reach out to the candidate in your ward directly, that information will be there for you. And you'll be able to get a little bit better of a chance to interact directly with the person that you're potentially voting for, and then eventually maybe representing you.
And all those links will have links to their websites.
To the website, the Facebook profile, whatever means of communication each individual candidate has.
Excellent. Yep. All right, so we have to talk about something that I have never seen in my political career, and we're going to talk about the Ward 5 election. And can we bring up Kathy Paquette's image here? This is the Republican that's running in Ward 5. Kathy Paquette, she's a great lady. She ran last year, didn't quite make it, but I think we're just going to push her over the line this year. She's got a lot of good values. Make sure you check out her website. Let's roll on to the next one. This is the thing that I'm confused about. I have never in my life seen somebody run as a virtual candidate. I just want to read the first line of this. I started to work a little bit on my virtual campaign. It is on our Martinique Island, not very New Hampshire, but it's our favorite place on the grid lately. Can we roll to the next clip? This is her virtual office. And nobody on my team knows how to respond to this, so if you do, let me know. What do you guys think about this? Have you ever seen anything like this in your life?
No, it looks like she's gone into full meta world.
It looks AI created to me.
It absolutely does. I would not take that candidate seriously. Actually, I would think that
How could you?
This is an AI generated fake, even a Grand Theft Auto 2 candidate. I mean, I don't want somebody representing me on their Xbox or their PlayStation. So, and we went through this during the COVID shutdowns and such, where people wanted to remotely come into the State House, where they wanted to be able to attend committee hearings remotely, vote remotely, or if they didn't want to show up, give a proxy vote to somebody else to vote for them. New Hampshire is, we've got, as you mentioned, we've got a great representative body. At 400 state representatives in the state of New Hampshire, it's one of the things I take pride in when I travel around the United States to different conferences and things is to be able to talk to the other state legislatures and tell them about the way that we run things. And they don't understand how we have so many representatives and how it's so close to the people. And I'm like, well, I can go pump gas and I'm getting ideas from somebody. If I'm in a virtual world, I don't know how that works because I don't know how the person is even your neighbor. They could be out in New Mexico and talking to you online.
Or Martinique.
Or Martinique. I'm not sure how that works. I want people representing me in New Hampshire that live in New Hampshire that have grounding in New Hampshire. And I mean, I'm a 10-year state rep, 5 terms consecutively. I represent my neighbors, my district. I hear from people all the time that are outside my district, and I remind them that we all represent everybody when it comes down to it when we're in the State House. Yes, I represent Rockingham too, which is Candia, Deerfield, and Auburn. But if you live in Nottingham, which I used to represent, and you have an issue, you can come to me. If you live in Martinique, I'm not going to listen so much. I don't know how that happens.
You mentioned that there's 400 people up at the State House. This I can say, when there's 400 people up at the State House, that is a tremendous amount of brain power up there. And you got people from all walks of life. You have judges, you have lawyers, you have doctors, you have nurses, you have business people from all over the spectrum. That's a lot of brain power, and that works for New Hampshire, and it's in New Hampshire's favor.
Not only that, I mean, there's a lot of people that don't realize that we are the 3rd largest democratically elected body in the democratic world, the democratic English-speaking world. I have to make that clarification. But we are only second to our own House of Representatives up in Washington and the House of Commons in England. We have more direct representation. And direct representation is that protection of democracy. Because for every 3,500 or so people in New Hampshire, you have a state rep. You can get one on the phone, you can email one, you can actually talk to one or run into one in a supermarket. And I challenge some of these other states when I talk to them in conferences to get more involved with their people, because where I represent 3 towns, so technically I represent more than my 3,500. It's split among some other reps that also represent the same district. We have an overlapping representation, but they're representing 100 times that.
Yeah.
And you can't have that personal interaction and that personal affiliation with your representative. You know, you can't get to know them, and you can't get to pull their ear aside and tell them what's important to you.
Yep.
And I mean, I can give you a good example of how that happens. I was playing a charity golf tournament a year ago for the Liberty House at Stonebrook. And I happened to be put on a team because I didn't have anybody signed up with me. I was all by myself. Just throw me with whoever you want. I'll just play. I'm just playing for charity. I don't care. And they threw me on the team with the owner of Stonebrook. And as we were playing throughout the day, I was like, well, is there anything that's bothering you at the state level that I can look into? I'm trying to make some conversation. And he mentioned, there's this stupidly written law about towing inflatables. And he said it's written so bad that I get stopped by 2 different Marine Patrol people and they don't even understand it themselves. They've got different opinions of how it's supposed to be interpreted. I went back and I looked it up and I said, wow, this is, and my background, I'm a senior technical writer. So this is what I do. I take technical information, I put it into layman's terms. And I read that and I said, oh my God, I couldn't understand this myself. And the reason is because in the advent of inflatable towing stuff, they stuck it into the law that was already on the books for water skiers. So everything was centered about how many observers you needed in the boat per person you were towing. Well, when you're in an inflatable, there's multiple people in one inflatable, so that doesn't really translate right. So I said, he's got a point, this is bad, and I rewrote it and put the bill in this year to basically take it down to, if you're towing 1 inflatable, you have 1 observer. If you're towing 2 inflatables, you have 2 observers. You can't tow more than 2 inflatables, and you can never have more than, I think, 6 people on 2 inflatables is the way we put it. Very simple. Nobody can be confused by that. When it went to the Senate, after we passed it through the House, went to the Senate, and the director of Marine Patrol actually came in and said, please pass his bill, because it really fixes this whole thing.
Yeah, that's great.
And I was, and this just came out of a conversation in golf.
Yeah.
But we were able to fix a problem that I've found out since, once the news broke, I've had people talking to me all the time saying, we've always had a problem with that. Mm-hmm. We didn't know how many people we needed on our boat to observe people when we're towing our kids on the inflatable, etc. We couldn't figure it out. The law was so confusing we couldn't understand it. Let's make it simpler. Nobody intends to break the law, in my opinion. Well, nobody legal, nobody who's law-abiding, right? Most of these people out on the lakes are not intending, if they're towing their kids on an inflatable, they're not intending to break a law. Yeah. But if they end up breaking the law because the law is written poorly, that's on us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's on us.
100%.
So.
And those are the kinds of things that can be fixed. There's a lot of good things coming up in the Manchester elections. We have a good slate of candidates this year. I want to go to a break, but we're going to roll a clip right now on some messaging that Pat McNoggle, I don't know if I said his name right, out of Bedford, he's the chair, has been working on for our committee, and I think it's pretty powerful. So we're going to roll that to you, and then we'll be back in a little bit.
As Democrats, we say the term illegal immigrant is offensive. We say they are simply undocumented newcomers. We say our borders are secure. And sanctuary cities make for more inclusive communities.
Democrats are good at blowing blue smoke. What they really mean is they don't care about the strain on your community's resources, such as healthcare and infrastructure. They're not worried about your family's safety, security, and stability. As unvetted migrants and even criminal elements arrive in your cities and towns, that a fentanyl epidemic continues unabated. And if you oppose the Democrats' open border policies, they say you are a racist. You see, when Democrats say something, there's always a catch. We're Republicans, and we're for legal, not illegal, immigration. That means closing our borders to illegal immigration and ending catch and release. Because America is a sovereign nation and must be discernible by secure borders. As Republicans, we stand for prioritizing and protecting our communities, our neighborhoods, and our children.
Don't be fooled by the Democrats' blue smoke. Vote Republican in 2024.
All right, we're back. So I thought it would be fun to take a minute and explain to what we do up at the legislature. So I was working on a bill with Jim about legalizing air rifles for hunting in the state of New Hampshire. And we do a thing up there called interim study. So when we have a bill, we've laid down the framework, we know how we want it to work, but there's still more objectives, more testing that needs to be done. In this case, it was the Commission for the Fish and Game that wanted to go down and see the impact that the air rifles would have on killing animal ethically. So that's what we did. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Let me start by explaining what the commission is, because some people may not know. Okay. In the Fish and Game Committee is a little bit more unusual than our standard committee. The standard committee usually answers to a department, sets regulations for a department. We're the ones who set the rules, but we get expert testimony from departments that we directly impact. For example, criminal justice is going to have people from police standards and training on a bill, or prisons. They're going to come in and they're going to testify on the aspects and the impact that bill might have. With Fish and Game, we have the Fish and Game Department, but that department is answerable to the Fish and Game Commission. The commission is set up with 11 different commissioners across the state of New Hampshire in different areas. The Seacoast has one dedicated, and then we've got one for every county, and they are the ultimate board of directors over what the department can actually do. So we don't get the department coming in and saying how they feel on something without having the commissioners telling them how they should feel about it. Mm-hmm. So we had this airgun bill, and I laid the groundwork 6 years ago when I found out that it was totally illegal in New Hampshire to hunt with any air guns for any animals at all, and I didn't realize that, and neither did any of my constituents. And apparently, up until 6 years ago, air guns could only be used for target shooting. You couldn't shoot any animals at all with them, even during valid hunting seasons or what have you. And I had a lot of constituents say, well, damn, I've been shooting squirrels during squirrel season with my air gun for years. And I'm like, well, you know, it's been illegal, so don't tell anybody. I'm sure there's like a statute of limitations on it, but so 6 years ago we had the bill come in, and we got some backing from Sig Arms, who was producing a lot of major high-power air guns. The committee at the time was not prepared to say, well, you can hunt big game with those big air guns, because we just didn't know that the technology was there at the time. Mm-hmm. So what we passed was a bill that allowed you to shoot small game with small air rifles, and for trappers to use some air rifles up to, I think, a 20 or minimum 25 caliber to take out an animal stuck in a trap, so they didn't have to make a lot of noise using a regular handgun. But we said, we'll look at the big game situation later. Come now you put a bill in front of my committee, and I was like, oh, damn, I forgot we were supposed to look at that later. Yeah. So it was great to have somebody come over and say, hey, remember that thing we were looking at that we should look at? We're going to look at it again. And so now's the time, because we actually have all the data now. But we had to interim study it because we still had unanswered questions. We had the department, and thereby the commissioners as well, on behalf of the department, asking about things such as, what about temperature changes? You know, pressure changes. So what if your air canister gets really cold and now it doesn't have as much pressure as it did when it was hot? Perfect example of when you use an interim study for the right purposes. Frequently, an interim study can be used to quietly kill a bill that you don't want to kill, but you don't want it to go anywhere. But we actually did a true interim study. Mm-hmm. And so we set up with the entire committee, the Department of Fish and Game, and all the commissioners. They were all invited. Not all of them showed up.
Yep.
But all of the commissioners invited to have an event at Sig Arms.
Yes.
Where we would see in real action with gel blocks what the penetration is, with data and statistical facts on temperature changes, mm-hmm. and on decrease in pressure per shot.
We had the velocity of the rounds.
We had the velocity with a chronometer, so we knew exactly how much power they were delivering. And I think it was the best use I've seen of an interim study that I can say I've ever seen, mm-hmm. in 10 years in the State House.
Yep. And
I'll let you go on.
I want to say thank you, number one, to Sig Firearms in Epping, New Hampshire. They have an amazing facility. If you've never visited that is something you should do. It is very, very impressive.
It is.
It was Northeast Firearms out of Massachusetts, which did the demonstration of the air rifles. And the air rifles went from 30 caliber, listen to this, up to 58 caliber.
I like that 58.
It is impressive. It is. Can we bring up the graphic of the row of guns? All right. These are the weapons that we tested while we were out there. And these go from 30 caliber, like I said, up to 58 caliber. One of the things that I was surprised about when we were talking about it, can we roll the next one? Get a little closer one up of the guns. That gun is only $400, which I was shocked.
Yeah.
They were so cheap. That they were, these rifles are so inexpensive to begin with. And so that was one thing. They talked about the foot-pounds of pressure that it takes to expel these rounds through downrange. That was the big issue. Let's show the commissioner taking a shot. There we go. Oh, that's the colonel. That's Colonel Jordan.
Colonel Jordan from Fish and
there
Game.
you
He's
are.
the chief law enforcement
Jim's
officer.
there. That was the sergeant from Nottingham. He works with the air rifle company. They were doing the testing. And if you can look at there, that flat screen that's next to him, that was the velocity monitor right there. And then let's roll the next picture. That was the commissioner. What was her name?
Megan.
Megan. Where's she from?
She's right here in Rockingham County.
Okay.
She's the Rockingham County commissioner.
And how long has she been on the commission?
Megan Hobson, and I don't know how long she's been a commissioner.
No, she was great. She had a lot of good questions. She asked all the right
Great
stuff.
knowledge.
Yes.
She was a better shot than Colonel Jordan.
Absolutely.
I got to dig Colonel Jordan a little bit here on that one.
He's a lefty. So bring up the next shot.
We had to move everything for him.
When we're talking about the gel block, we're trying to see what the impact was. So when you're using this for hunting, you want to make sure that you make an ethical kill. You want to make sure there's enough power and velocity in the round to put down the animal so it doesn't suffer. So that's why we had this test. And you can see on the right hand of your screen the impact that it makes. And that's the damage that's caused inside the animal when these rounds are penetrating.
That's the shock cavity.
Yep. Why don't you explain that?
Let me explain right here that what you see off the left side with that lead slug coming out is not coming in from the left. That came in from the right-hand side and started to spin and exit to the left. What happened is it entered at the right-hand side and created this shock cavity, and that's how a bullet kills. Unlike an arrow, when you're shooting with archery, an arrow slices through and it slices vital organs, and then there's a blood loss and a death from blood loss. A gun kill on an animal happens by shock. And what happens is the bullet hits and creates a shock wave through the body that liquefies the organs. It just basically destroys them from the shock. And that shock cavity that you see is exhibiting the amount of force that is spread through that gelatin block. And I think you can probably see there's a small channel that goes all the way through. That was from a .30 caliber that went through the block, but didn't really cause much shock damage. And for that reason, the .30 calibers were determined to be not enough foot-pounds.
Correct.
And when we originally were writing the law, we weren't even thinking at all in foot-pounds. So this is one of the things that we brought out of science to bring back into our bill writing, to bring into the legislature next year. And we have buy-in from the Fish and Game Department and from the commissioners that what we want to do is focus on foot-pounds of energy, not focus on the caliber of the gun. Because you can have a caliber that might be perfectly suitable for hunting out of a regular powder firearm that doesn't have enough foot-pounds coming out of an air gun. And one of the Northeast hunting gentlemen mentioned that he thought Maine did it a little wrong because Maine had it set up by caliber. And they were allowing .30 caliber, and at close range, .30 caliber might be good for taking deer, but at longer ranges, .30 caliber might not be quite enough.
That's why I wanted to mention this specific bill, because we did the interim study, and it's going to change the way that the bill is written. The bill is written from .30 caliber up to .50 caliber. Now it's going to be written at 200 foot-pounds of pressure, or whatever.
Or better.
Or better, whatever Fish and Game and the commission determines is the proper foot-pounds.
Right.
And that's the way we're going to write our law will be smarter than other states.
Because what happened was some of those .30 calibers were only 180 foot-pounds.
Which,
and Northeast said, we don't think anything less than 200 foot-pounds is suitable.
right.
And that larger one that you saw, the 58 caliber, has actually been used. It's got enough foot-pounds and velocity to take down water buffalo.
It was 1,000 foot-pounds.
It was, yes.
It was impressive.
It was impressive. And for $400, and it's foldable, so you can put it in a backpack and take it with you.
Yep.
Amazing gun, and very accurate, very quiet.
Let's talk about the accuracy, because that was one of the questions that the Fish and Game Commission had about, and they were concerned that as you make rounds and you're shooting rounds off, you're going to lose air pressure.
And that you drop
and you
lose
drop
accuracy.
at foot-pounds, and we that's why we had the meter there.
And we watched the velocity. And after 5 shots, you only dropped less than half an inch.
Yep.
And at 5 shots, that's about when you want to recharge the gun.
You shouldn't be taking 5 shots,
So-
then you're a bad shot when you're hunting anyways.
Exactly. You've got 1 shot to take the I've got to plug myself and say I've never taken more than one shot to take an animal, Brian, but absolutely, you got one shot to take it down and maybe another shot to ethically put it down if you didn't get a clean shot on the first one. You don't ever need 5 unless you shouldn't be out in the woods hunting.
I would say so.
But 5 shots, now the way I could justify the 5 shots, what if you're out with it folded in your backpack and you didn't bring anything to charge it again? At least you got 5 shots of defense on something that's coming at you. Without having to recharge it, you can take on a charging bear or a pack of coyotes.
Yep.
Typically, if you take down the first coyote, the rest of them will scatter anyway. So, yeah, 5 shots. You dropped a half an inch. That's not a lot.
No.
It's equivalent, and we brought this point home constantly during the trials because it became evident to us that the amount of care you need to make sure that the gun is charged appropriately and that you're shooting appropriately, the way that you load that lead projectile in with the air gun, it's no different than using a muzzle loader. Mm-hmm. It's really the same thing that we would put on somebody for using a muzzle loader to muzzle load hunt, and we allow that now. If somebody didn't put enough powder in their muzzle loader, they would be shooting far weaker, just like if they don't have enough air charge. If they put too much powder in there, and a bigger problem than if you have too much air in, because at least the air has a regulator on it. So you've got no problem there. But all of your responsibilities fall in the same area. One of the problems we did run into is the Pittman-Robertson Act, right? And that's a technicality that most people aren't going to understand. But there's a federal law, the Pittman-Robertson Act, that takes and puts a tax you never see, because it's done at the federal level on all of your ammo and firearms and everything that you purchase. And all that money goes back into conservation for hunting and fishing and all that kind of stuff. Fishing gear also has the Pittman-Robertson Act too. But oddly enough, the pellets sold for the air guns, all of the air guns, those lead pellets don't fall under the Pittman-Robertson Act, and they aren't taxed. Yet. So Fish and Game doesn't get any money back from the feds for purchases on that. Yep. So in order to make this work for being able to fund Fish and Game for enforcement and use of these weapons, we'll probably roll it out in our bill the same way we do muzzle loaders and allow somebody to buy a tag to hunt with a air rifle, and that takes care of the cost, takes care of the enforcement, and
if the federal government does change the law, it'll cover it.
It will always allow it to, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So, I mean, there's a lot of little wrinkles that go into a law. And I could even mention one more wrinkle we have to address is going to be how they're stored in a vehicle while they're being transported.
Right. Because currently the law says that it can't be, a round can't be chambered. When it comes to a muzzle loader, which is equivalent, like we've been talking about, you can still have the round in the barrel, but you can't have the ignition device in. So if that's a cap or if that's a 209 primer for an inline muzzle loader, you can't have that ignition source in there. So you can still have a full powder charge and a projectile in the barrel, but you can't have the ignition source, and that's considered unloaded. With an air gun, you don't have the powder, you don't have an ignition source. So we were trying to figure out, well, what means unloaded? We're still talking about it, but I think that what it's come down to is there is a way on all these air guns to discharge the gun so that it goes into a safe mode, where even if you pull the trigger or try to cock it, it can't do anything until you've completely gone through the whole system again, even if the round is still in the chamber. And I think that's what we're going to end up with, is it has to be completely decharged, so that it can't accidentally fire inside of a firearm during transport.
Cool. Well, that's a little bit what goes on with just a simple little bill like that. It's probably going to take about 2 years in order to put it through, but we did it the right way. We did the research way, and I think our bill is going to be more intelligent than other states because we took all those steps.
Not only that, but because we did it the right way, we already have approval from the commission. They said to us at the shoot, they said, we were thinking about an air gun as one thing, now that we've handled them and fired them, we know what we're talking about, right? So it's not just the science. You can't just show them a data sheet. If we had tried to pull this in front of a committee without giving people this ability to handle them themselves and see them in action, we would still have to try to explain to the commission, what are we talking about? Because most have a preconceived notion of what an air gun is. Most everybody out there has a preconceived notion of what an air gun is, and it's probably the Red Ryder BB gun from Christmas Story, right? That, you're going to shoot your eye out, kid. Well, this would do a lot more than shoot your eye out.
I sure will.
And it's not that preconceived notion. We needed to drive home that this is a new generation of air guns. This is not the same thing we're talking about. And they took that back with them to the rest of the commission. Same thing with the Fish and Game Department. Because the commission listens to the department as much as the department has to listen to the commission. So when the biologists in the department have an opinion or the law enforcement in the department have an opinion, that changes the way we put our bill forward as well. And so we were able to have Colonel Jordan, the chief law enforcement officer of Fish and Game, right there seeing what this meant and what it did. Commissioners right there seeing what this meant, what it did, and realizing these are not your grandfather's Red Ryder BB guns that we're talking about taking deer or moose with. These are sophisticated, as they call them, pneumatic weapons.
Which we'll have to define.
We're going to need to do that too. That's another thing that we've decided that we have to do in the law. We currently have air rifles listed in our RSAs in our law, but we don't have a definition for pneumatic weapon. And so at some point we need to, in our bill, put in a definition into our state law that says pneumatic weapon equals an air rifle, because you can't have conflicting definitions in our law. Right. We need to be able to make sure we're consistent all the way through. And the industry is calling them pneumatic weapons. And so we should probably align with what the industry is doing. However, most people still know them as air rifles, and we have to be able to appeal to the people as well and be able to make sure they know what they're reading and what they're talking about.
Yep.
If you walked up to somebody in the street and asked them what a pneumatic weapon is, they probably wouldn't tell you it's an air gun. So that definition has to get in there. But we learned all this because of going through it the right way. We did it the right way. We did it with science and with experience and with hands-on demonstrations. And now we don't have as big of a hurdle. I don't expect that this bill is going to have much problem at all passing next term.
Because we did the work.
Because we did the work. Because when we take this bill and it shows up in committee for the first time, and it will come to the Fish and Game Committee, and I'll be chairman again after I'm reelected.
God willing.
I don't know what the makeup of the committee will be, but we already know that we have testimony that's positive coming from the department, and we have testimony that's positive coming from the commission. And most of us up there, although, as Brian, you said earlier, we have a wide array of knowledge areas, most of us understand when we're not in our knowledge area and we listen to the experts.
That's right.
And that's the whole purpose of the committees. So most people, when we have the department and the commission telling us this is the way it works and we saw it, we did it, and we understand it, they're not going to fight it.
Right.
These guns are going to be a new way to hunt in New Hampshire, but I think they'll also solve some of our problems. We were talking about Governor's Island and Long Island.
All right, let's go there. So let's talk a little bit of that wrinkle.
So Governor's Island and Long Island, two of the islands up in our lakes region in New Hampshire, have a huge overpopulation of deer problem that's been around for decades. And the residents of the island have put in place covenants and restrictions on the hunting on those islands. So the state is under an obligation to control the deer populations while still adhering to situations where we're not supposed to allow firearm usage, etc. So
what is the law right now?
right now you need to have special permits, and they're archery only permits, and you need to actually prove your archery skills before you're granted a permit. So it's very hard to get permits to hunt. And when you hunt there, you have to hunt archery only. You have to have an arrow that's attached to a line on your bow so that the arrow can't get lost. You have to take every part of the deer with you when you leave. You can't leave any gut piles or anything behind. Lots of technicalities. But most of it comes down to the residents do not want to hear gunshots, and the residents do not want to be disturbed by gross piles of guts and things like that. Gunshots is the big thing. When they don't know you're there, but you're still taking care of the deer, they're happy. And this, Airguns will open up another avenue for us to allow people to actually get that population under control.
It's a solution.
Because we've been chasing our tails with archery.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to get it under control. We've been able to manage it somewhat.
Yeah.
But there's just not enough archers up there able to take enough deer to keep those islands from being overpopulated,
Yep.
which causes then property damage to all of the residents.
Yep.
So this will offer potentially another avenue to allow us to take more of the deer off the island so that we can get down to a manageable population that's more in line with what their own feeding habits would allow them to do to exist on the island.
Yeah, without disturbing the residents. Could we throw the picture up of the commission, the last one I had there? That is all of us there that
There we are.
Yeah. So all those people who attended this event, and it was it was a big deal.
We had a number of committee members there, and then 2 commission members,
Yep.
and 2 department members, I think.
Yeah.
And it was a great event.
It was a good day.
And it was actually such an educational thing. Actually, everything that we learned out there on the shooting range solved every problem. We didn't even need to go back to the classroom to go over the data sheets.
It did flow very nicely day.
When we asked the department and the commission,
If they had anything
do you
more,
want to go back to the classroom now and go over the data sheets? They said, no, just mail those to us. We've seen everything we need to see here.
Yeah.
We've seen the chronograph telling us how fast these are going, and we've seen it drop by a few feet per second between shots, right? Because we did that. We shot 5 shots, and we watched it drop from 800, actually almost 1,000 feet per second
Yeah.
to
I lost about 30
it lost about 30 feet,
foot-pounds
I think,
per shot.
30 feet per second, not
yeah.
foot-pounds, 30 feet per second. 30
that's
feet
right.
per second. It lost in velocity.
Yeah.
But the amount of force being delivered downrange was still impressive.
It was lethal, and the round didn't drop that far down the target, so
Absolutely not.
yeah, you didn't lose.
Absolutely not. It was great to see us take multiple shots on the same spot on one target so we could see that they actually overlapped the shots. They didn't drop significantly.
Yeah.
Even one of the Democrats who was there that was skeptical said, wow, it didn't drop.
Well, there you go. Mission accomplished. That's how you get a bill passed up and conquered. We're going to take a short little break and then come back with something that Jim's very compassionate about. we're back. Jim has an organization, a charitable organization that he's spent a long time working on, and I'm going to give him 10 minutes at the end of the show to talk about it.
So when I first started with the State House, and I was first assigned to Fish and Game, one of the first things that I questioned was, what are we doing for our veterans in New Hampshire to try to get them out hunting and fishing and get them outdoors? And it turned out a surprise to me that New Hampshire has one of the highest per capita populations of veterans in the nation.
I did not know that.
We are like number 3.
Really?
Yep. Well, we have a low population, but we have a lot of people who are very patriotic and want to get out and serve the nation, and then they come back and retire. And so we have a lot of veterans in New Hampshire. And so there was no way that I could legislatively do something for veterans on a big scale. I took a small step forward, and I found out that as far as disabled veterans go, we only gave a free hunting and fishing license to a veteran who was 100% disabled. And that was reciprocal with Maine and Vermont. So if we gave one, they would give one as well, so they could hunt through Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire for free if they were 100% disabled. But for anyone who was less than 100% disabled, they paid the same price as everybody else. And I managed to negotiate with Fish and Game and make a bill pass, I think it was in my second term, that took care of any veteran that was 85% to 99% disabled, getting a 50% discount off their lifetime license. So they could actually get out there at a much cheaper rate as well. We made that non-reciprocal with Maine and Vermont in order to make it work, because that was part of the bargain with Fish and Game to make their budget work. But even that was still not enough. And knowing that I couldn't do something legislatively, I said, well, I'll just start my own charity. And I went down to the Secretary of State's office and I filed paperwork, and I started the New Hampshire Veteran Sportsman Foundation. And our entire mission is to give free hunting and fishing licenses to veterans in New Hampshire who need help getting out, having a license and getting out to hunt and fish. The tagline that I came up with for this is that the cost of a license should never stand between a hero and a hunt. And I believe that's true. It is our natural resource that we can give back as thanks to be able to let you go out and hunt and fish. And it does so much for the veterans' mental stability, grounding, and just everything. One of the best instances where I gave a license away, I love to tell this story today when I'm at an event or something and I'm promoting the organization. I got to say straight out, I've never had a veteran themselves reach out to me and ask for the license. It's always a family member or a friend. It's the mom, the husband, the wife, the close friend. They're always the one to reach out and go, can you do something for somebody? Because they need to get out. And so this was in my first 6 months of starting the charity. We had just had a spot on WMUR in Concord in the park talking about it. And I got a letter from a woman that she said her brother lived up in New Hampshire on the Connecticut River. And he lived on a road that was accessible only 9 months of the year, small cabin right on the river, and he was having problems. He didn't have much to look forward to each day, and he didn't have money, so he had given up hunting and fishing because he couldn't get out and do it because he couldn't afford a license. And I said, this is what we're here for. Just give me the information. And she said, well, what do you need? And I said, well, a copy of his DD-214 to show that he was a veteran. And I got to say straight out here too, we don't care if you're honorably or dishonorably discharged. In some instances, the dishonorably discharged veteran needs to get out there more and hunt and fish, right? We don't look at that. We just want to make sure you're a real veteran that you're not pretending to be a veteran, and that you live in New Hampshire, and that you need help. So we ask for three things. We ask you to write that you need help. We're not going to question it. If you say you need help, you need help. If you live in New Hampshire, provide proof of residency and provide proof that you were a veteran, whether that be a VA card, I've had that happen in the past, or DD-214, some proof that you're a veteran, and we'll make sure that it works for you. So she gave me a copy of his DD-214 and his driver's license, and her letter to me asking for help. And we made this happen, and she came back to me after. She said, when I gave him that license, it changed his world. He actually went and said, you know, that boat that was left to me by my friend that's been sitting in the side yard, he said, I'm going to fix that up because I can go out and fish off that now.
Nice.
And so even beyond the hunting and fishing itself, it gave him something. Every morning he got up and went out and started working on that boat.
Yeah. Purpose.
And so this is what we're there for. And if you know of a veteran who needs help, reach out to us at our web address. It's www.nhvsf.com. Or if you want to donate to our organization, every penny of what we bring in goes to the purchase of the licenses for the veterans and to getting it to them.
That's awesome.
We don't spend any money on any fees other than our mandatory registration with the state that we have to do, which gets waived occasionally because we don't bring in enough donations, and the state says, oh, you really didn't bring in enough donations, you can waive your fee, which we really appreciate.
How many of these are you doing?
We did, probably the first year we did 3. Second year I think we did 8. This year so far I've only done 2.
Okay.
Which is interesting. However, we have had communication from somebody who's affiliated with a VA services that's asked about multiples. So that may work as well. And we're hoping that they come back with some requests. We also have partnered with some other organizations like Warriors from 45 North. They have a camp up north in New Hampshire that they bring veterans up to, but they bring them from all around the United States. And so we've told them, if you need a New Hampshire license for a New Hampshire resident, we'll provide it. If you bring in someone from out of state, we can't help you. Our charter says we're helping New Hampshire veterans. So we're limited in that aspect, but we have partnered with them and other organizations that help veterans. And we've sponsored the Liberty House golf tournament. We've sponsored their holes as well. So we definitely are out there to try to help the veterans get outdoors, hunt, fish. If you want to fish without hunting, that's fine. We get requests for hunting licenses only. We get requests for fishing licenses only. I try to give them a saltwater and freshwater with that. And we've had requests for combination licenses so they can do both. We're happy to do whatever we can do to help you get out there in the woods and do things. You should not ever have to try to choose between home maintenance or buying medication or food and getting out to hunt and fish when that's our natural resource as a state to give back to you for your service.
That's awesome. Jim, I can't thank you enough for enjoying, coming out here tonight and speaking to everybody, and I appreciate everything you're doing. And
Thank you for having me.
all right, buddy. I'm Brian Cole, and hey, you guys have a good night. We'll talk to you soon.